All right, half a day, everybody. Good morning. All right. If we have some people in the back who may want to shift closer to the front, we'd love to see those hands, especially when we get to the Q&A portion. Let's go ahead and kick off today's event. My name is Austin Fortuno, Special Projects Coordinator for the Office of the Attorney General of Guam. It's nice to have everybody here for, again, yet another discussion of very important law that really the intent is to protect each other, right? This is the fifth installment. We've gone to 4 previous villages. This is our second village in the north, and we're glad to have everybody here in the room. Before we kick off today's event, I just want to take this opportunity to recognize the panel of attorneys who are with us this morning. First off, we could recognize the Attorney General of Guam, Douglas B. Moen. Let's give him a round of applause. Also joining us from our General Crimes Division, we have the Acting Assistant Chief Prosecutor, Neil Bonavita. Let's give him a round of applause. Also joining us from the General Crimes Division, we have AG Investigator William Salisbury. Let's give him a round of applause. All right. Coming from our Civil Division, we have Attorney Alberto Galloso. Let's give him a round of applause over here. From our Solicitors Division, we have Attorney Kisa Tillman over here. And of course, last but not least, we have Attorney Alexander Ford, also from our Solicitors Division. Let's give him a round of applause. All right, so we had quite a lengthy agenda in front of us, especially when we come to the Q&A section. But of course, I would like to go ahead and welcome for her opening remarks, the Mayor of Yigo, Ms. Frances Lizama. Let's give her a round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you for coming out. You know, this is an opportunity for all of us here to gain some knowledge on the castle doctrine. But also, I want to thank the AG's office and his staff for coming out and bringing this Q&A here, because I know that in previous Q&As at the other villages has been very successful, and a lot of knowledge shared, and I'm hoping that the takeaway here is that we're all on the same page with what the do's and don'ts of the castle doctrine, what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. But of course, again, thank you. Again, this is an opportunity for us to get the clarification on what the castle doctrine is, and again, I'm sure that whatever questions you have, I'm sure that they will entertain. And again, thank you for being here.
All right, thank you, Mayor Lizama. I believe at the entrance table, everybody was able to receive a copy of our agenda, so you could use that to guide along what's going to happen today. I'm going to go ahead and welcome our AG investigator, William Salisbury, to kick us off with a firearm safety demonstration. All right, let's give him a round of applause.
Half a day, good morning. Firearm safety is everyone's responsibility. I just want to come out and say that, okay? The fundamental firearm safety rules. Nearly all accidental firearm injuries and death result from failure to follow these rules. These rules must be followed whenever you handle a firearm. New users must practice the rules so they become second nature. Experienced users have become complacent. Do not allow your experience to turn into complacency. The number one rule is to treat every firearm as if it was loaded. So even I have the slide lock, no magazine, chamber empty, if I was to be passed this firearm, I would recheck the firearm, okay? For my safety and the safety of everyone else around me. Even if you are certain the weapon is empty, always treat it as a loaded weapon. Don't do anything with an unloaded weapon that wouldn't be safe with a loaded gun. Many people have been accidentally hurt or killed, believe it or not, thinking the weapon's unloaded. Never accept another person's word that a gun is unloaded. Verify it for yourself. And that goes back to what I said. If I was to be given this firearm, I too would still check the firearm. Never let the muzzle cross anything you are not willing to shoot or destroy. Meaning, when handling a firearm, never point it in a direction of anyone or anything that you do not plan to shoot. Okay? Imagine a laser beam coming out of the barrel of your weapon. Never let that laser touch anything, even for a moment that you aren't willing to shoot. Keep the weapon pointed in a direction that will safely stop any bullet fired. And that goes back to a basic fundamental. If you, for whatever reason, deploy that firearm, it's a point of no return for that bullet. Once it starts leaving that barrel, it'll be hard to stop. 3, keep your finger, which we call this the trigger finger, if you're righty or lefty, keep your finger off the trigger and outside the trigger guard until you want the gun to fire. Keep your index finger extended along the frame of the weapon until your sights are on target and you plan to fire. Meaning, if you come to the decision of deploying that firearm, that's when your finger goes into the trigger and you pull it. This prevents you from unintentionally firing because you were startled or clutched something with your hand. Somebody's breaking into your house, you have your firearm in your hand, it's loaded, safety precaution. You don't know what's going on until you identify the target. Okay? That's why the index finger along the frame, for safety reasons. And number 4, know your target and what's beyond it. A lot of the houses on Guam are semi-concrete, full concrete. Some of it's a tin shack. So you really have to be mindful of when you pull the trigger where that bullet's going to go and how much property or items it's going to penetrate. Okay? Always positively identify your target as what you intend to shoot. Be absolutely certain of what or who you are shooting. Bullets may travel through a target and strike something behind it, hence tin shack. You may miss, especially under stress. So if you're involved in a stressful situation, there potentially could be unnecessary harm to anyone that's around you. Additional safety considerations. Do not allow children or unauthorized users access to your firearms. Handle weapons only while sober. So when we're teaching on the range, one of the questions I ask is, are you under any type of medication that would prevent you from safely handling the firearm? Are you under the weather? Are you sick? Do you have any type of disability that would prevent you from completing the course? No alcohol, no illegal drugs, no prescription drugs. Always inspect and maintain your weapon and the equipment, the magazine, the holster, the complete weapon. And always follow manufacturer recommendations to include ammunition. Any questions? Now the firearms we have this is a Glock 19 pistol. We have a Remington 870 shotgun. Lock to the rear, chamber clear, no rounds in a magazine tube. And we finally have someone was to give me this weapon, I definitely would look at it as if it was loaded. So the first thing I would do is drop the magazine. Magazine is empty. Lock the bolt to the rear. Visually and physically check the chamber. And always make sure the weapon's unsafe. Owning a firearm is everybody's responsibility. Any questions? I thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you so much, Investigator Salisbury. We'll go ahead and hand it off to the next portion of our agenda. Let's please welcome to the podium the Attorney General, Guam, Douglas B. Moylan.
Day. Mayor Lizama, I wanted to thank you personally for allowing us to speak with your villagers here. From our perspective, as an attorney, these are the clients that elected me into office, and I put together a team here. They were introduced here today. At our office, we're trying to make it practical for everybody that took the time out on a Saturday, and I thank everybody that came in on a Saturday to be here. This isn't about probate law. This isn't about things that you normally would go get a lawyer for and be litigating the next 10 years about. This is about what you do when you walk out of this community center and have to deal with the crime problem that we're having on Guam. And having been in the office now as my second term, 2.5 years into this office, about 6.5 years, I've served you people as the Attorney General. It's been an honor to do that. When I was here 17 years ago, we didn't have a crime problem. Meth wasn't ravishing our villages as it's happening today. And after all this time, 2.5 years, seeing of what's going on out there, the two biggest problems Guam is having are meth addicts and repeat criminals. And there's an overlap between meth addicts being repeat criminals, but you do have meth addicts that aren't repeat criminals that just want to engage in a life of crime. And in that category, we have violent and nonviolent criminals. And I think from a villager's perspective, that's exactly what you guys are experiencing. You got your common thieves that don't want to hurt anybody. Then you have your individuals out there that want to hurt you and will have no problem hurting you. And that's usually in the area of robberies, rapes, criminal sexual conduct, those sorts of things. So this is not about us speaking to you. This is about you engaging with the resources that I brought here today that you literally pay as your tax-paying dollars. We also have many different handouts today to provide to you to help you understand what we do in the AG's office, and it's about 8 different divisions that we do at the AG's office. Having said that, I always like to begin where WAC left off. The reason why we put the firearm safety in the beginning of our presentation here is that that's the most common thing that we see, is homeowners trying to defend themselves, and obviously a firearm is a way to defend yourself, is a deadly way to defend yourself, but it's not what the Castle Doctrine is all about. The Castle Doctrine is protecting yourself, your family, and potentially others using whatever force is necessary to protect them. It could be a slingshot, it could be a knife, it could be a machete, it could be any weapon that can be turned against somebody for deadly force, okay? So to segue from where WAC just left off, in a home defense situation, you're not normally going to want a rifle because when you're in close quarters, the rifle is more difficult to maneuver when you're going around your rooms and stuff. So let me give 2 tidbits from my old grandfather who's now passed away. For a pistol, and this is the most common line of home defense, you never hand a pistol to somebody with the breech down like that, because you don't know whether or not there's a round in the chamber. So if you're giving it to your son, or if your son's giving it to you, and training, if you have a firearm in your home, it's critical that everything that Mr. Salisbury said is everybody in the home should have that training, because there may be a situation, and we've had it in the prior events where literally the wife is home and the husband has the firearm, has a licensing registered firearm, but she isn't put in a position that she needs to touch the firearm to defend herself. So first thing is, you never, as Mr. Salisbury said, load a fire or keep a firearm loaded and chambered on the firearm. You don't want someone to accidentally press the trigger. The Glock, it has no separate safety. It's actually in the trigger, which I find funny because you're literally about ready to shoot it when you press the trigger on it. And you never hand a firearm, again, the breech must be open. This is what they call the breech. It must be open. So to show the person and to give it to them, usually the bullet will fall out if that's the case. And the breech is open. It's a form of safety, and the magazine's not in it. That's an important part. Most of your situations, if you choose to get a firearm, you need to consider this is a tool and how you're going to handle it and in the context of the rest of your family. My uncle, J.R. Moylan, this is not a good thing to be shooting in your house because it's BBs in a spread pattern. So it could literally hit somebody right next to the intended target. What this is good for is for the So this, when a burglar hears that, if they're smart, they leave. So you literally can just have one of these and make that noise, and most smart burglars will get out of there. Okay, so having said that, the Castle Doctrine is a presumption that you can use deadly force in your home. And the legislature extended what your home is, as opposed to four walls, the doors within that house, to the curtilage, which is the area around the house. And it doesn't even need to have a fence up. So we'll get into those, and I think your questions will be important given what we've received in the past. So the Castle Doctrine is a presumption that you can use deadly force if the person is unlawfully and forcefully entering your premises. So there's kind of like a prerequisite that they must be there unlawfully and forcibly entering your premises. But the statute goes on in the next sentence to say that if they're there unlawfully or forcefully entering a business, residence, or car, you have a presumption that you can shoot first without asking them to leave, demanding that they leave, or giving them any warning for purposes of leaving your residence or not harming you. Because that's the whole thing. 2 o'clock in the morning, you're groggy, you go out, you're hearing something, and you're in a situation, right? Most people, most juries, and that's another thing. All this is, the Castle Doctrine protects you law-abiding citizens. This isn't the criminal that's going to be using the Castle Doctrine. It's going to be a situation where the Attorney General's office chooses to prosecute you as a homeowner. And I'm not here to say that we're going to prosecute homeowners, but I am here to say that that's the normal, that's the reason why the Castle Doctrine was created. Because the defendant, the criminal is dead, and the law-abiding citizen is put in a situation where they have to defend themselves and pay a lawyer and in court for potential being thrown into jail. I think one of the cases that was the catharsis that started the whole Castle Doctrine was the George Zimmerman case, if you guys remember that. That name Zimmerman. I believe it was in Florida, but he was outside his house, and that was actually a stand your ground situation where a teenager or a young person came up to him and he shot the person. So it started this conversation about self-defense. Before the Castle Doctrine, the common law, the normal rule was that if you're in a location and the person is coming at you, you can't just pull your gun out and then shoot the person. That would be deadly force, right? You had to, person is the aggressor, and use equal to that type of force that they're using against you. If they didn't have any weapons, you couldn't pull out a deadly weapon and hurt them. You have to use equal force to repel the aggressor. That's the normal rule. The practical side is when you get the right attorney general in office, that person is going to evaluate this. Because again, part of what I said earlier, you're getting charged. That's why the Castle Doctrine exists. You law-abiding people that own property, own a home, and stuff like that. But nobody gets charged unless the Attorney General's office charges them. So on Guam, we have an elected Attorney General. You choose your Attorney Generals according to their political platforms. What do they believe in? Because if you're in a situation where the government is being used against you, you don't want the type of prosecutor that went after George Zimmerman. You don't want the type of prosecutor that went after that Daniel Penny. I found that as the most shocking case in our recent history was at 2023, where a former Marine trying to defend somebody, a group of people on that subway, was charged by their woke Attorney General in New York that thought that their little ivory tower, that if you were in this situation, what would you do, right? That's basically what we're talking about here. If you were in this situation, what would you do? And that's why these prosecutors that I have to my right and the left, these are the people that get those police reports because the police come in after you've taken actions to defend yourself in these cases. And you saw what happened on the Daniel Penny case. He was made to go through the trials and tribulations of a jury trial. Nobody wants to be charged in court because that's when you start looking at your bank accounts and you start looking at how much money am I not going to be able to send my kids to college or to buy that new car for my wife or whatever the situation is. It's going to hurt you whether you like it or not if you're charged with a crime. And you're in that category where you don't get a free public defender, okay? And again, speaking to the choir, if you own property, you're going to have a problem getting a public defender appointed to you. So you choose a good attorney general that's not going to jump at every headline that's going to put you in the crosshairs of having to defend yourself before the judges and the juries out there. That having been said, I strongly believe in the jury system. I strongly believe in all of you who sit in that jury box and make the decision, like they did in Daniel Penny's case, that the case should not have been brought or it was, you're not guilty, okay? But the first safety that you have is the Attorney General's office and what you say to those police officers when they come and make the police report. Because the AGs don't normally speak with the defendant or the people in the police report. It's normally they take a look at the police reports that the police officers give. So part of our conversation today will be about if you're in a situation where you actually hurt somebody in your home and person's lying on the ground, dead or dying, what do you do when the police come by to investigate what happened? So that you can use the law, you can understand the law versus doing something innocently, but unfortunately not within the protections of the law. Let me use the example that I believe Agate and Mauricio had talked about, down south. They talked about somebody comes onto your property, and let's assume that the curtilage, and we'll go over that as well. Curtilage, they go into your shed and they pull your lawnmower out, and you see them as they're pushing that thing towards their pickup truck on the side of the sidewalk. Down south, the initial reaction was that I want to shoot him because he's taking my property. Even with the Castle Doctrine, it does not give the ability to shoot somebody, okay? So we got to be very careful there because we don't want you in a situation where you can indiscriminately shoot somebody just because the Castle Doctrine exists. There will be a segment of the community that will say that that person didn't deserve to die because all they wanted to do was take the piece of property that was in your property. There has to be a threat that exists, and walking away from you, and again, this is the facts. So let's just assume that that's just how the facts play out. Person was walking away, got shot and died, and he fell to the ground. You'd be in a very bad place for purposes of whether you could be charged or not. The law doesn't protect it. Now, whether or not the AG's office charges you is a different question. And I think down south, they use that fact pattern. that guy was in my yard 10 times. He was in my house a few times, and we have all these police reports, and he was just coming back to do that. Still probably wouldn't address that fact pattern in terms of killing the guy, because that fact pattern was he was on his way out. But if the fact pattern was that you shot him in the leg or in his ass, stuff like that, and he lived, I don't think my prosecutors would go after that. But I mean, are you that good with your firearm to do that? So now the civil side is something else, since you may get a lawyer and try to sue you for shooting him. But I mean, common sense, right? This is what we're talking about here. The Castle Doctrine was intended to jump to what a jury would normally do, like in the Daniel Penny case, and the jury acquitted him. Interesting, there was a little bit of a procedural nuance. They couldn't get him on the first one, and then that kind of scared me what the New York juries were like. But then the prosecutor dumped one of the charge, and then they had to decide the lesser included, I believe, which they found him not guilty on. They hung jury on the murder case, and then they did a not guilty on the secondary charge. But what that said was, on the primary charge of murder, there was somebody in that 12-person jury that says he should have been locked up the rest of his life for having saved those people by putting the guy in a chokehold. Okay? So that's the type of intricacies where you get the lawyers, and you're paying the lawyer to have to defend you in court. Okay? So, like we mentioned, and by the way, I'm going to allow anyone that has a question to just jump in. Okay? That's why we have our people here to address your questions. The Castle Doctrine deals both in criminal and civil, by the way. Okay? So it also protects you in that case where I just mentioned that we may not charge you as an attorney general's office, but the criminal defendant or his family might charge you under a civil case. It gives you protections against that civil lawsuit to have them quickly dismissed. Okay? And that's why I highly recommend, and we designed it back in front. Recommend you put this on your refrigerator magnet. So in that situation where you're faced with this, that you can kind of look at it. And I've highlighted some operative sections in there. It applies to businesses, cars, and homes. Right. Okay, you see, great question. The questions that we've received was, like I had opened up, your husband has his pistol, you get it, and your family member gets it, and then they use that pistol. Well, I don't have a firearms ID, so the law could clearly charge that person with shooting that firearm without a firearms ID. Plus, there's another law that says that you can't discharge your firearm within 50 yards of another structure. Okay, like in the villages. Technically, like when you go out there on New Year's Eve and start firing that firearm, they could charge you with shooting within 50 yards of another building. So in your fact pattern, 2 charges would be reviewed by the police. First of all, the police. And this goes to the practical side. The AGs aren't going to be there when they come there to your home. So you need to explain to the police officer the facts of what occurred, and hopefully the facts play out to your defense on what's going on. The person is guilty of shooting the firearm without the ID, and guilty of shooting a firearm within 50 yards of a home environment. The Castle Doctrine will protect you against the 50 yards within another house. So that probably wouldn't stand up with the grand jury or with a judge's scrutiny. But the discharging that firearm without the firearms ID, it could be charged, and it probably could get to a jury. But I wouldn't charge it. As an attorney general, and I think most reasonable attorney generals and prosecutors wouldn't charge it because you were in fear of safety for your life. You may be statutorily in violation because you should have got your firearms ID. You knew there was a firearm in the house. You could have got one, la-di-da. But practically, it was a difference between me and death, right? So that's a good fact pattern, and it's a practical question because it probably will play out in future cases. The businesses. I think there was a Dedito person recently in the last few years that shot an intruder. The barbershop, Wai Sing Sung. The beauty of what happened there, it didn't even get to me. The officers reviewed it, and they said, Castle Doctrine applied. We're not going to charge it. We're not going to arrest Okay, this is the practical side. When the police come to your residence, you've got a dead body, and you're kind of going, hey, the guy deserved it. That's not usually the first thing that you should say. You should say that he came into my house, he broke into my house, and I was in fear of my safety or my family's safety. That's usually the best thing to put on a police report of what the officer is going to say. Will the officer arrest you? And that is what the Castle Doctrine, I think, and it's clearly worded in that regard. You're not going to have the luxury of the elected Attorney General sitting there and listening to you. But by the way, the officers often call the AG's office, and I usually answer it for the last 2.5 years. But I mean, and that's where it plays out, with the facts going down. But in that barbershop incident, they didn't call because the officers understood, because they spoke to the people and they understood that this was a righteous shooting, right? And that was, I think he lived on the top of his business. That's why I think they included businesses in there, was that some businesses are used for actually their residences for some people. Also realize there's the car situation, which again, somebody from down south asked a very difficult question about, it was like a road rage question. So the guy that started the road rage, affects somebody that was victimized by road rage, but then when he's coming up on him, gets out of the car, and the guy that's being affected can't move. So he comes up to him, walking up to his car, and before he gets to his car, he puts one in him. So that, it's not in the car. The law says it's got to be like probably reaching into the car, something to show a barrier has been broken for purposes of using the Castle Doctrine in your cars. Because it clearly says it's in the car, not approaching the car. There's no curtilage around a car. Okay, so let's talk a little about what a curtilage is. Like that, what we talked about with the lawnmower being taken out of your shed and walking away from it. The curtilage is your property line boundary that has notices up that basically tell everybody that it's no trespassing, don't come here. The law doesn't specifically say what notices should be up, but as I've said before, the best notice that you can have up is find a sign that says trespassers will be shot. It's funny, but in Texas, some of our guys are from Texas here, that's what they buy, and that's what they mean. So that I think is, you really need to give notice, and the reason why I'm conflicted in feeling about the curtilage law is think about, and this is something that I've mentioned before as well, I'm not advocating killing people. I don't believe in killing people. I think that it has a lot of damage to the person that kills the person, emotionally, psychologically. But think of yourselves in our villages. You know, all the kids that may want to jump your yard in order to, do whatever the kids want to do in the yards. A ball that goes over the fence. I've done it when I was younger. We jump over the fence and get it and run out. Hopefully no dog. Those are the things that happen every day. The curtilage is dangerous because some person that's been affected by criminals has that frame of mind that these people are out to get me, they're going to hurt me again, and they see somebody in the yard, and then they poke their rifle or their firearm out and shoot the person, and then they find out that that was the next-door neighbor's boy. Or, practically speaking, you got a cute daughter, and the guy next door has been seeing her for a while and is jumping in your house at 2 o'clock in the morning. Shooting that person dead, and he may have been the guy that actually, the boy that cuts your yard. You need to think about these things before using a deadly force. I think most people should be, but at 2 o'clock in the morning, again, it's the nature of the person and their ability to use the tools. It always comes into play when you're going through these fact patterns, and there is no perfect fact pattern. These guys are going to have to look at it, okay? That's why I say that police report. Look at the police report and what you're going to say to the police so that when it gets to this level, first of all, you don't want to get arrested. You can avoid it. But if you do get arrested, it's going to come to here to see if you're going to stay in jail. Yes?
Good morning, AG Moylan.
Good morning.
You may know me. My name is Pete Santos. I'm a municipal planning council member for Yigo. Thank you, first of all, for coming out to our village. And I just want to add to some of the stuff you've been saying. The Castle Doctrine, you got to look at it two ways. It's self-defense or protection of property. It doesn't apply to protection of property. So you can't shoot the guy that's running away with your lawnmower. It does not apply to protection of property.
Let's do this. I'm not here to have another lawyer lecture the group here. I want to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to clarify for our village.
But I disagree with you on that. Person's taking your lawnmower. If you know that you can shoot him without killing him, the castle doctrine might not apply. But whether or not the person can be shot is a different question.
I understand that, but I just want my villagers to understand that it doesn't apply to protection of property. Self-defense, yes.
The castle doctrine does not apply to to protection of property. That is clear. Yes.
That's all I wanted to add.
Excellent. So, yes, sir.
Or whatever you had. So what happened yesterday was a police officer appeared at my gate. I live just down the road at the corner. I spend some time staying in my shop. I have a house there, and I also have a house at Tabuni. Somebody reported a car stolen and claimed that he had a tracker and said the vehicle was inside my property in my shop. So the two police officers were there. One, because of the rain, I guess, was wearing all black. No markings, no badge, no way to tell he was a police officer. The other person, obviously, when I went back and reviewed, I turned the cameras on him because I have cameras around the whole property. It's about 10 acres. And I viewed and realized he was a police officer. But the one police officer that was wearing identification happened to see the sign on my warning signs that have a phone number, and he called me. Had he not called me, it would have been a very dangerous situation, because had I been in my shop with that guy coming over my fence to look, because he said, and I clearly have it on video, he said, well, I'm just going to jump over there, and I'm going to go look in there and see what I can find. I'm going to inspect the property. The officer that called me asked for my permission, which I declined because I wasn't there, and I didn't know what was the intention. He wouldn't tell me any information. I had to find out this information later. But had I been in the shop and that officer come in and had a firearm or threatened me in some way, I would have shot him.
Okay, excellent. Okay, two things I'm thinking about here. First of all, we got to be careful if it's an open police report. Probably, do you have an attorney yet, or have you been?
No.
Okay, no problem, because I don't want to.
So I know basically where it's going.
The reason why I'm saying that is if you're represented by counsel at any point, there's an ethical rule against speaking directly. But since you're not, if it's an open police report, then we probably want to defer talking to you directly about it.
Right.
But at the same time, let's just relate to your question is joining with many other questions that we received. The Castle Doctrine has exceptions. Look at this back and front handout that we have. One of them is a uniformed police officer.
Right.
You can't use the Castle Doctrine if, like behind you, you see a person with a badge. You know, the normal indicia.
That wasn't clear.
All black.
Initially.
You know, you guys got to watch it. These tactical guys that go in all black. Because
Us federal guys, we consider that the RoboCop syndrome. These
Right.
cops that aren't properly trained,
right.
that don't have a Bravo with them, and they just want to barge into the situation. When I was a federal officer, there was a cop, that did exact that. He barged into an apartment, and it was the wrong apartment. He got the address wrong, but he barged in and got shot right in the face.
Right.
And
So-
they didn't have a Castle Doctrine in that state. But because the AG was elected, he figured out that he shot it in good faith because he had a family that was
Right.
inside.
That idea
so,
of what
so that's the only thing.
self-defense is.
What I want. My point is that this thing's got to be balanced out. The cops got to understand the situation with the Castle Doctrine and know what the ground rules are. Also, with the right to search, getting a search warrant or whatever, you know. And a stolen car is not a life or death situation. My understanding of all the years I've been in law enforcement, but so is the Castle Doctrine. We don't know what that person's intention was because he wasn't addressing himself as a police officer.
You see, the beauty of what you're saying is just because we have a licensed practice law and we went to all this education, the beauty of the jury is going to be
That's correct.
these 12 people all have to agree on it. And when you have all these, put yourself in that situation, how would you feel? You're either going to get a mistrial or or you're going to get a not guilty and an acquittal. The danger is that to get to that situation, sometimes it's on that edge, because you know out there, there's two different types of people out there. People that are probably like all of you here, you feel in your rights to protect yourselves, to protect your homes. And then there's the other set of people out there that are living in ivory towers, that think that, hey, they don't like guns, they don't want to see a gun. Anytime you discharge a gun, you must be wrong. So that's our community, right?
So my point there was that, in my experience, like you said, talking about an attorney and this, you couldn't talk to me. My situation, in my capacity, with my experience, was first to try to solve it at a lower level. That's usually the way to fix any kind of situation that has to deal with law or anything else. Because if you have cool minds and you have people that realize, and that's me, because I would have done a little bit more due diligence before I would have shot him if he came in. But if he's right above me holding a weapon and I can't tell if he's what, and he's ready to pull that trigger,
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right. And you see, that's when the police officers put that report together, when the forensic evidence shows what happened, to support that situation. Hopefully the prosecutors in the AG's office, the AG, will be that safety valve between you and you're having to get an attorney. You said certain things in there that are important. We've had a situation, and be careful in that curtilage too. The law doesn't say property boundary. The law says what a curtilage is the area immediately around the residence. The word curtilage has been used it's a legal term. The word curtilage has been used in the past. You have a home with a gate. The officers and like your newspaper boy, they have a understanding and a right to walk on go inside your gate, go up to the front door, and knock on the door, okay? That's normally what the curtilage usage has been in a lot of before the castle doctrine. So there's this understanding among people, the reasonableness of, if you don't, and most people don't have doorbells, if the gate is there and it's open, they'll normally walk to the front door and they'll knock, because shouting from the outside normally won't get the attention, and cell phones in the past, they didn't exist. But I mean, so now they're saying that zone of property that you normally had a right to just go up and knock on the door has become a kill zone, potentially. So if you have a 10-acre piece of property, like, that big, your curtilage is probably not going to be deemed on the property lines, and you get to buy a sniper scope and to shoot people off.
I have a 7-foot fence all the way around my 10-acre property. I have signs every 50 feet. I have done everything humanly possible to cause a barrier so that people know. And I tell people, my dog's there, and I have 23 of them, are there to protect the criminal against me. It's not to protect me. And I have closed circuit TV, so that way, at any point of the property, they will film you that you were the guilty one.
And you can activate the landmines too, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, we don't talk about those self-exploding. Yeah, no, that's over the fence.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, I've taken due diligence to do
Right.
everything I possibly can to give you that warning. And I like the way you put the sniper windage deal, because I use that all the time. But I have an electronic one on my Lapua equipped rifle. But if the threat comes and you're going to threaten my family,
Right.
I've got the threat, I've got the training, and I have the weapons. So
Well, you're the true American, right? You
Well,
believe in the Second Amendment, and you don't want to hurt anybody if you can avoid it.
but that's my right, right?
Right. The situation we had earlier was a person's going onto their property and taking their bananas. Farmers are getting these type of situations, these problems where they're taking their
crops,
the vegetables and their fruits. And on that one, they wanted to use deadly force, but again, the deferral is it's not meant to protect property. So, but the curtilage, again, you put the facts right, you could actually shoot the person to kill the person if the facts are correct. It has to be a threat to the life. Like the instance that we used for the farmer was, if you have a history of police reports that this person has gone onto your property, that they come up to you and threatened you, and then you see him at 2 o'clock in the morning, approaching your house, but he was really trying to get some bananas with his machete. So he's got a machete. you've got 5 police reports on that guy, and he's coming towards your house, although there's a banana tree there, and then you shoot him. Under this law, it looks like you would be protected because you have a history of this person actually threatening to hurt you. So in the curtilage, if it's properly labeled, you can do that. But if the facts came out that that guy was only going to get the banana tree, and that was his first time that he was there, it's going to be difficult for the prosecutors. A lot of they come out of the facts.
There was a case many years ago between my uncle Francisco Taitano, and there was a guy that came and was picking all his coconuts, and that's how he made his living. He lived by Costules and Harmaloop Road. So one day, the guy threatened him and says, you know, I came here to get your coconuts. He says, no, but that's how I make my livelihood. By taking my livelihood away, you're basically going to kill me. So he took out his .22, and the guy came out of the tree with a machete and went after him, and he shot the guy. That's before the castle doctrine was ever even thought about. The Attorney General at the time, who was appointed, and you can do the research and figure out who it is. I won't mention names. But both him and Judge Paul Abate decided that the case wasn't worth trying. They had consulted each other. And it was a sad thing. Years later, Gabby Guerrero and Dedido, same thing. He shot a person, but he didn't kill him. But, you know, that was basically the same thing. So us farmers that still have farms, we still consider those things as serious threats. And that's why many of us have chosen to put a fence up. And if you go back to the documents, I was one of the original people that created that castle doctrine that gave it to the senators to pass. And so it's a matter of protecting the normal citizen from actually becoming a criminal. Is what our intention was. Because we have too many criminals nowadays, you know? And if you take out law-abiding citizens, what do you have left? You don't have blue-collar workers or people to provide for, and that's what's going to be the destruction of our island. Because right now, I get a lot of applications for jobs. I have a lot of people I hire for military contracts, and they don't qualify because of their criminal convictions. So a lot of these people are productive people that end up, they can't even get housing. They become homeless, some of them.
The cycle?
So we need to protect these people from going down that road and becoming what they end up being. And that's why I support everything you guys do.
Thank you. You know, to not have to deal with the criminal, to preventive medicine, preventive measures, and education is really the key. It goes to the fundamentals of our community. When you have meth in it and how it destroys the life, you can't just fix it and walk away. It's a lifelong battle, and because it was designed to affect the brain, it's a chemical imbalance that occurs that grabs people and rarely lets them go. Right. And the prevalence of it in our community, that's why in the AG's office, civil criminal, it's so much bigger than what we're talking about today. It's trying to prevent those criminals from becoming criminals. It's giving them the tools to succeed, but at the same time, bad acts, bad consequences. At some point, you got to draw the line. And that's why the Castle Doctrine exists. That's why Senator Parkinson increased it to the curtilage area. Is it going to fix the problem? No. It's going to put that person either 6 feet under or at DOC. And I hear you exactly what you're saying. I use the example, by the way, that Korean tourist that got murdered from nuclear physicist from Korea. The family sent him over here to help him and his wife celebrate. According to the facts as they appear right now, the 2 people came up to them walking in Tumon in the evening. Person got out of the car, had a gun, wanted the money. Husband struggles, protecting the wife, doing whatever he needed to do. And probably because of the meth, the guy just shot him, hit him in the stomach. He was dead within 7 hours. But when the police officers found the criminal, one of them, I think the girlfriend may have turned him in or something, the cops went up to the car. And do you guys know what he did? Killed himself. See, that's not a criminal in my mind. The person had guilt, remorse. Otherwise, he wouldn't have shot himself. So That's what meth is doing to the community. It's turning our good villagers, our friends and neighbors, people we go to church with, it's converting them in a very bad way because it's a chemical dependency that changes the brain. But what do you do with them? You can't just release them to the community because they're going to hurt somebody else. That's the type of crimes that we're seeing in the AG's office. People are turning from meth addicts to murderers, willingly or unwillingly. That's what the drug is doing to them. So castle doctrine is intended to protect you. It's intended as a defense, criminally and civilly. The Second Amendment is a fundamental right that you have. It's in the Organic Act, and every citizen on Guam, every person on Guam has a right to use it. The jury is the best tool to protect us from injustice. I don't care what the Attorney General says. I don't care what my prosecutors say. If the case isn't a reasonable one, when the facts come out, and that's one of the nuances, when the facts actually start playing out in court, the jury has an infinite wisdom, and they don't have JD degrees. They don't have law degrees. When you sit in that jury box, probably the best jurors may even be the ones that don't have a college education, because the practical application of what we see every day is what the jury is intended to do to protect us against charges that are not just. Joe.
Thank you, AG. I have a similar situation to the gentleman here. There was a raid. I live in an HOA, and there was a raid that was done on the neighbor. But before that, my wife came running upstairs shaking. So she said she saw a guy with a gun outside. Okay? I grabbed my weapon. The first thing I did was look at my cameras. And sure enough, there was a gentleman with a firearm outside. No markings whatsoever. Okay? Then a little bit further, I pan the camera to the left, and I see police. If I didn't do that, actually I told the wife to go upstairs. That gentleman without any marking, I have no idea what he's doing there. So we may have, again, it may end up bad. I wouldn't have opened the door, but if he did try to jiggle the door open or whatever, this gentleman said it may have ended up bad because there was no marking, no police,
Right.
no badge, no anything, and it's just, my wife panicked. There's a guy with a gun outside.
But you carry a gun, even the police officers, when they have the guns, it causes a natural kind of being careful, right? You're naturally put on a higher sense of adrenaline whenever you see a firearm, and I agree. That's why the police officers that are always dressing in black, got to be careful, because if it doesn't say clear in yellow police officer, it goes to a jury on whether or not the officer was in the right or the wrong on how they approached a normal citizen. Yeah. And by the way, there's also that rule. It came up about the malls, the business establishments, when they say you cannot have a firearm inside the establishment. I think Donkey or some Kmart may start putting those things up. There is an exception under your firearms permit that if the private property owner asks you not to carry it or have it, you're not supposed to bring the firearm in those places. Well, generally it's permitted unless they put a sign up to say otherwise. Yeah, I think they may have it up. But I think, as most people know, when you're seeing all those shootings that are going on out there in the public, the only ones that are saving people are the ones that actually have a lawful firearm.
I think it's important that firearms owners also know, like banks and hospitals, schools and whatever, that law also, because a lot of people now are very paranoid about going to a school or somewhere, which is basically safe haven for any shooter, because they know that the average citizen can't carry his firearms in there, and that's what we're seeing in the U.S. right now. And so, going on that premises, us business owners that carry large amounts of cash to the bank, we normally have to get permission from the bank manager beforehand and say, look, I got to defend myself to your doorstep. Can I carry my firearms, come in and make a deposit?
Interestingly, I don't think Banks is on the list.
No, but based
No,
on what you
the-
said
the
about,
Well, I
about
was going to say,
notices.
this has come up before. So what you're saying is exactly what people are asking. I got a
Right.
firearms permit, I got a firearm, can I
That's
bring
very
it in there? Right, the court, the legislature, but the banks aren't on it. So if you came in with your firearm and you had a concealed firearm permit, technically, they're not supposed to be harassing you on it. But, obviously, because it's a bank, they're,
but that's why we try to do that, because some states explicitly tell you, you need to get permission, before, especially if you've got it open carry. And so my big worry is that, where's the division on that? Because technically, an armored car service or security service is a private entity. They're not really, in most states, considered law enforcement. So now, are they allowed to carry like that into certain places? You have to develop the boundary and tell people where it's fair game. Because I've seen some states where security service, armored car services, they're not allowed in a premises armed. So what they do is when they get to that border, they send the unarmed person in to deliver.
there's
Well,
a
the armed
practical
people
side
outside.
to it, guys.
Yeah, and
'Cause just say you walk in with your holster and your firearm and you're, acting big
Everybody
and
gets
bad.
scared.
Well, the other guy that has the firearm, he's probably got his hand on the firearm ready for you to pull it out, So, these questions are good. I want you guys to continue with your questions because I want the staff to participate in this. So what you're saying is, I'm trying to remember, somebody also talked about what you're mentioning there. The right to, you have the concealed and non-concealed firearms statutes. I honestly think that the concealed licensing is a violation of the Constitution because you can get a non-concealed without any training. But for concealed, you need to get certified before you can get that firearm. So our office, I know, has been looking at that, on whether it's a violation of the Constitution to have two standards to carry a firearm.
So now with all these firing ranges being shut down and very few advertised, the common person that wants a concealed weapons license that has to get the certification, it's very difficult. We have to renew our training before we can renew our concealed license. But I don't know whether it's, I shouldn't probably say this, but I don't know if it's because of the police department realizing there's a situation there and not requiring everybody to get certification. A lot of us that have had our concealed weapons license, I've had mine for 40 years, almost 50 years. But they realize that people like myself that are former law enforcement clearly have it on their FBI background check. They don't require us to get that certification. Now that's discrimination to me,
Oh, it's actually,
because it should be that everybody follows the same rules.
well, the presumption is because it's a fundamental right of self-protection to carry a firearm, and of course we all know the Constitution was developed around England coming in and taking over the people want to revolt from England, the right to bear arms in order to provide for the militia, right? To protect us as a government, protect us against a government that becomes a despot government. You have a right to have the firearm to overthrow the government. That was the Constitution's initial protection, but it also goes into our self-defense protection at home, home defense. So I would read it the other way, that requiring certification before you can exercise your Second Amendment right to bear arms should not be allowed when you, especially when you have a non-concealed or a concealed, a non-concealed, you have to keep it open, that doesn't require the certification. So it's like opposite. You would have it for the
So why
certified.
hasn't that been challenged and taken to the senators, and the senators taken action?
We're looking at it.
That's what I'm wondering.
No, exactly. We're looking at it because it doesn't, there's no difference between a concealed and non-concealed. You're still going to be shooting the firearm. So why are you requiring a certain group to have certification and a certain group that doesn't have certification? It's a restriction on exercising your right to bear arms.
Certification
from one
doesn't
approach.
cover every aspect
Right,
of
right. It's not
what
tactical
we're trying
training.
to protect, yeah.
Right.
So that was my worry.
Right. I understand, and that's why it's an issue that we need to resolve in the AG's office. Research it and then look at an approach. That's one of the duties of an attorney general, is to strike unconstitutional laws, go after unconstitutional laws. But yes, you are correct. So, by the way, again, we're here on the Castle Doctrine. One of the things that the meth addicts are looking for is cash. The game rooms are notorious for getting hit by the meth addicts, and anyone really that wants cash. The tourist industry down there, because people traditionally, they think that tourists have more cash than credit cards or other things. So anytime that your house, especially if you're known to be a business owner and that you own a home, they probably know, the meth addicts know that, if they know you, Guam's so small. In Barragata Heights, there was a person that worked next to a pool spot, and this is like in the 80s, I think. They literally took our neighbor's, it was his brother, they killed him, put him in the trunk, and burned the body because they knew he was a business owner. So money and criminals, they go hand in hand, and people that know you have money or jewelry, these meth addicts are looking for anything to steal, okay?
Has anybody had an issue with like these marijuana shops that only can do cash?
That's funny because in the States, when I was in Seattle, the marijuana shop that we had gone to, it was funny. It was like a biker thing. They had on the windows, they had these chicken wire all over it, and you go in there and they have all the marijuana right on display in Washington State. And then I was looking to the side, and right behind the cashier, they had shotguns. They had all their armaments because you can't use the banking system for marijuana, so they were in cash basis. So I've been telling the marijuana industry here, you better watch it, because if it ever gets to that point where they're selling it at the dispensaries, it's going to become like the game rooms. The meth addicts are going to hit those marijuana dispensaries because they know it's cash basis. So, we have a frequently asked questions that we've handed out as well in the packet. Sure. Thank you, sir, for your...
You're very welcome.
So I'll ask my team, do you guys have any comments you'd like to assist in our audiences? And by the way, we're online also, so this is being broadcast. Any comments that the team would have, situations? Alex.
All right, y'all. I was making sure it wasn't going to do that, and it did it. All right, so there was a lot of discussion today. I noticed on the limitations on the Castle Doctrine, right? Specifically when it came to, let's say, uniformed police officers being on your property. And I want to give you an idea of what it's like for us when a police report comes in, right? So it comes in, that's all we really have to go on every morning, right? We don't speak with defense counsel, we don't speak with the witnesses, we don't speak with the law enforcement officers that day generally. We just get an arrest record, right? In that record, it's going to give us a statement of what happened according to the law enforcement witnesses. When we review that, right, we're trying to be reasonable, right? We don't want to overcharge. So something I would look for in this type of circumstance, right, if it was me charging that day, the statute says against whom defense force is used when it's a uniformed law enforcement officer. A peace officer is defined in Title 5, Chapter 5, and a police officer is defined in Title 10. And when we start looking at what a police officer is and a peace officer is, when we look at Section 77-122, it discusses what a uniform is, right? What I would be looking at before I made a recommendation, let's say, to the acting assistant chief, right, I would come up and I would say, hey, based off the facts, I'm thinking this might fall in or not fall in to uniformed law enforcement officer. One of the portions here that I think is really important is it says the chief of police may direct certain police officers to serve in civilian clothing as their uniform, right? So these are the types of facts that we're looking at when we're trying to determine, right, if you guys used castle doctrine, right? Because it does limit, right? We don't want people shooting law enforcement officers, and that was like essentially kind of this fear in the discussion today. We're balancing your Second Amendment right of self-defense, the right to bear arms, right, all of that, with, hey, we want law enforcement officers to go out and investigate and do these things. So let's say there was, maybe in my opinion, and I don't get to decide everything at the end of the day, right, obviously, that based off the facts, this very, very, very narrow set of facts, that some law enforcement officer was not uniformed, not empowered by the chief to be in civilian clothing, right? I might say, hey, sir, Mr. Bonavita, I think that this might be a difficult case if we were to prosecute, right? They might immediately try and assert castle doctrine. So that's the type of, things we're thinking about when we're doing this, right? It's like the Attorney General said, at the end of the day, we're trying to be reasonable, we're trying to balance your rights. It would be perfect in an ideal world if no one had to discharge a firearm, right? When he held the shotgun and he racked it, it's way better, in our opinion, if the firearm's never discharged. Having to sit there with the police report and stare at the facts on trying to determine, was this self-defense, was this castle doctrine? Because that is another piece, we focus on castle doctrine today because it is actually a very strong right if you exercise it appropriately, but you still have, separate from castle doctrine, your other rights in Chapter 7 of Title 9, your regular self-defense rights, right? So there was some questions today on protecting property. Now, if you have the handout on, the frequently asked questions regarding deadly force in property, yes, it's clear we're not going to want to use deadly force, but you can use regular, right? You still have non-deadly force that may come up under Section 7.9, right? So that is one of those things, again, when the police report comes in, we're staring at what he was referring to as a fact pattern. We're trying to figure out, based off balancing all the facts, did you exert too much force, right, when you were attempting to protect your property or self versus an appropriate use of force, right, on protecting yourself or property?
One of the important things also that Alex is, I think for practical purposes, the Zimmerman case, remember the Zimmerman case, they talked about duty to retreat. That's a big word in the self-defense area. When you're out in the open and a person's coming at you, do you have a duty to retreat? Under the common law and the statutes, there is a duty to retreat. The duty to retreat in the castle doctrine, you don't have a duty to retreat because that's considered your last line of defense in your home, in the curtilage, in the car, in the business. So that's an important part because what Alex is doing, he's talking to you about when you're in the community, like we're in the parking lot at Kmart and the meth addict's coming up to you. That's why you saw that billboard out there. That's the Attorney General of Guam, this Attorney General's office, belief. I would rather you guys deal with it by shooting that person down than when they're coming at you and your kid's in the car, that sort of thing. Every fact pattern is different. The law, this is very difficult to understand because everybody has a different idea of what defense means. And what you're telling that police officer, like when you have that little kid next to you, I don't have an ability to retreat because that guy's coming at me, therefore I got to put him down. The example one of the ladies used before, she's one of the grandmother that's only about 4 feet tall, and this guy that's huge is going
coming up to her to attack her. He has no weapon. I've got a little 22 in my pocket. You know, the little woman is saying, the smaller woman, if I pulled out and shot him, would you charge me? If you put it that way, probably not. You know what I mean? But I mean, it's a violation. You have no castle doctrine, and you relate to what's the common law, what is the law for self-defense. She does not necessarily have the right for self-defense because she should have been retreating as opposed to going in her purse and pulling out her 22. But the guy was like, Hulk Hogan. So these are the things where the AG's office would look at. And by the way, we would even look at it for self-preservation and resources. You put that before a jury, you think you can get 12 people that are going to convict that nice grandma on the stand? It's a losing case, right? So that's the common sense that you really need to approach all these issues with. And this last one that we put here, questions have come up. When do I shoot? Right? To shoot, to not to shoot. That's a very instinctual type of action-reaction, right? And you don't know if you're going to be able to get a second shot. When you're in close quarters, do I shoot him in the leg and hope that that's going to stop that meth addict, which it might not stop the meth addict, and then he's already on me. So I only had one time to shoot him in order to stop him. He's so close, right? I usually say to that response is try to wait as long as possible. You know what I mean? It's all the facts and circumstances. When you're in the guy's in the curtilage, he's got a gun. There's nothing wrong with just shooting your gun up in the air, and even though he's got a gun, he's running away. These are the practical considerations that you guys would have to do. And I'm not saying there's any right or wrong answer at this point, because it's all fact-driven.
Right. So it's like the general saying. When a report comes in, first of all, it only comes in if law enforcement arrested you, right? So let's say for a moment you did exercise your right to self-defense. If law enforcement never arrested you and prepared a police report, we never are going to get it, right? So there's nothing to charge in the first place. But even if they arrest you, right, and they recommend the case be forwarded to our office, we have the discretion not to pursue those charges. We can disagree. Reasonable minds can differ on what happened that night. It's no different than as part of prosecuting, there is always a defense, right? So let's say we did want to pursue a case, you would get defense counsel, and we're going to differ on what happened that day, right? Reasonable minds will differ. Our theory would be if we moved forward, you broke the law, you exceeded whatever statutory entitlement of defense you had, where defense would say, no, my client did not exceed their right. What's great currently about our office is that, we're strongly in favor of your right to defend yourself, your property, your home, your family, your wife, your children. So that is one of the reasons I think we have these seminars, right, is we want to encourage, you to exercise your rights, but in a safe, legal manner, and in one in which when, us frontline prosecutors get the case every morning, that we can say, all right, this was an act of self-defense. I feel pretty confident that no jury would convict this. The judge would probably dismiss the case if we filed it, right, under an affirmative self-defense right. So, that is where we're at. At this time, before I step away and turn it back over to the general, did anyone have any questions?
In my carport, no, I don't want to say it. I don't want to. And they stole my blower.
Sir, let's do this. Why don't you speak in general terms? Don't speak about your case specifically. Just so that,
Could you, because I would say the answer is no. Under the right, if we're just speaking generally, like anyone in this room, the castle doctrine discusses that you cannot use deadly force to protect property, right? And if we're assuming for a moment we're just talking about property, it would now fall under the Article 4 of regular defenses of property. And under Section 7.9, we discuss what force is justifiable and reasonable, but under subsection F, it does say the use of deadly force is generally not justifiable, right? So in the event, we're discussing personal property and it's just personal property, like someone came in, you cannot start, unlike with castle doctrine where you have presumptions on your side, right? We're presuming your life's in danger and you can exercise deadly force. With personal property, right, the analysis is very different. And that is why we're here today, right? We're trying to explain if your life's in danger, you do have castle doctrine. But if it's just property, defensive property kicks in. And I highly encourage each and every one of you, because more than likely it's actually going to be a situation of defensive property, right? It's like the general was saying, if people come in, maybe it's theft for meth, because we get those types of cases where someone's broke into your home maybe while you were away or your property, and then we have a theft case for, a pressure washer comes up a lot, or a bush cutter. And, generally y'all aren't home, right? So thankfully there's, no one's life was in danger. You didn't have to do anything, nothing happened to you. But let's say you are home, in those circumstances, in the event you use deadly force, the law enforcement officer could arrest you, and we would be in the situation of having to determine based off a fact pattern if that is a case we'd have to move forward on, right? So that's why I would highly caution. It comes down to the frequently asked question, bullet point number 8, right? Like, when do you want to use deadly force? Try to wait as long as possible. And
We had a question
Right.
In one of the earlier outreaches. The fact pattern was it's a curtilage, it's in the carport. Person comes up to the person that's rifling through the car. If the person lunges at you as you're investigating who's in my car, and it's a curtilage, you have the notices up, trespassers will be shot, that sort of thing, no trespassing. Person lunges at you, and you shoot him in your car, although he was there, it looks like as you came upon him, he was just there to steal something from your car. You probably wouldn't be charged under the castle doctrine under this thing, because your facts would have been told to the officer. I went outside, I got the notices up, that's considered my home, and I went into the car and the guy came at me. That would be okay. Well, that's the fact. That changes the whole complexity of it, because that becomes a threat when he came at you. But again, the perfect one was he's got my lawnmower, my bush cutter, and he's walking out the door to his car. Yeah, you can't. Well, if the facts are, but I mean, again, it's remarkably different. If the guy is in your car and he's going through your glove compartment and you put the gun to his head and shoot him, that's going to be a. That's the fact pattern. That's why when the cop comes up to you, make sure the facts support what the. I'm not saying that to lie on it, by the way.
Generally speaking, it's not that you don't have a right to defend property. It's that the statute says it has to be a justifiable use of force, and that deadly force is considered not justifiable, right? So there's some distinction of force there, right? And generally speaking, when we charge a crime, let's say it's unrelated entirely. Like, if you want to think about this, like, let's say someone attacks another person, a machete or a gun, we consider that a deadly weapon, right? So we're probably going to argue that if you defend yourself with those objects, that was deadly force, right? So there's some ground. That's what I'm trying to convey. Generally speaking, without discussing any specifics of any open cases, is when a arrest record comes in, this is why each case is, it's hard to give just a straight general answer, right? Because each case is so heavily fact specific. And that's what the general's kind of hinting at. If, you know, if you come in and you see a guy is kind of walking out of your garage and he has all your stuff, yeah, you're gonna try and stop him. And what's deadly versus not deadly there? Maybe if you, you know, say, hey, drop my stuff, and maybe if you grab him, right? That someone's gonna argue grabbing by the shoulder is force, but is that deadly? I'm not sure I could argue under the statute that that was a deadly weapon, right? And so, but if it's now he's in your garage, you're in the garage, and the man lunges at you, you don't know if he's armed. Now we're back to castle doctrine with presumptions that your life was in danger, right? So maybe in that instance, the deadly force is reasonable. And I'm not trying to, you know, confuse any issues here. I'm trying to give you an idea of what our life is like every morning, because it's easy to forget, but GPD is out there trying to protect y'all, and they end up making arrests eventually. And then those arrests, within 48 hours, have to come into our desk, our office, and they end up on our desk. We have to make decisions, right? We have to try and figure out what happened that night, entirely based off a police report. And we don't want to create a situation where you become a defendant merely for exercising castle doctrine rights, right? So that is, you know, the general's like policy. He doesn't want us to charge someone if it's very clear under castle doctrine you were just using your right to self-defense. And I'm not sure, you know, that is clearly conveying a answer that you would like, right? But because it sounds like you have an open matter. We can't really get into specifics. So
I have a question over here from Mr. Joe Ariola.
We have this photo and the narrative sent out. It's all over social media. I'm sure you may have seen it. But I'm going to read to you exactly as it says. Today, July 31, 2025, at around 2 p.m., two suspects entered, I'm not going to say the market, okay? Entered a market in Chalampago on foot, armed with a machete, and left, also on foot, with an unknown amount of cash and merchandise after holding up the teller at knife point. It's hard to read. Suspect pictured is a skinny young male, left eyebrow. So in this case, we have the photo here. He held the store up at knife point. Would it be a justified shooting if the cashier pulled out the weapon and shot him?
yeah, that's currently an open case,
Oh,
and
okay.
so we're not able to
So,
discuss our thoughts on that.
Well, and the reason why I'm asking is the guy sent me this and they asked me to.
Right, you know, we
Ask-
also get those, what do you call it? They're viral videos.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
And
Good,
I
good.
literally, what is the last one that we got that was all over the
July
media?
31?
Oh, that car that flipped coming down the hill.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know, I'm thinking meth addict. But I mean, he's going so fast, right? He's lucky he didn't hit that pole before he rolled his car and he went back on his tires. Pretty neat, right? But I mean, you know, I informed the team to get the police report and to make sure that guy gets charged with reckless driving at the minimum. But you know, these facts are all going to be in court, so that's why the team's a little bit reticent to talk about it, because we don't want to have this thing replayed and say that this is our decision on something. But I guess my point, Joe, is you raised the business. There's a reason why the senators put a business is protected by castle doctrine, and it doesn't even say that it's got to be in operations and you got to be actually, it's in the business. That's your home for the owner of the business. So you got your mom and pop stores, and the guy comes in with a gun. That kind of cuts against what we talked about earlier, that you have a right to take the gun in to, because you got a license and it's a registered firearm, right? So you walk into somebody's business with your properly licensed firearm, The castle doctrine says that if the owner is in fear of, reasonable fear of threat, he could literally shoot you with that gun. So I'm kind of like speaking out loud right now. You've got two different concepts that are going on. But clearly, if the guy's walking in your store, your gas station, with the idea that they're going to shoot you or steal the money from that, the castle doctrine would apply to fact patterns to the businesses, right? It talks about the businesses, and by the way, it's been applied to people that are in your business that are under your authority, like your house. The people in the house have a right to the castle doctrine if they're there lawfully, okay? So, arguably, that would be a fact pattern that would play out, but we would first have to charge the employee, right? That would be the situation. You just killed that guy that walked through the door. What the team was talking about, what we see is priors. And I often, when the cops call me up to decide things, I ask, what is the prior showing? If they've got assaults, burglaries, robberies in their background, and they're in a situation where it could go either way, the prosecution normally is going to say, well, this is a pattern of this individual, so let's just, for purposes of charge it, have him arrested, book and confine, and let's figure it out when we bring him before the judge, by the time we bring him before the judge. So, fact-driven, fact-specific, important, facts matter, right? That's the bottom line of our conversation here. But you need to take a look. The statute's not that difficult to understand when you read it here. Put this on your refrigerator. Have it available. So, you know, if you're in a situation where there's crimes going on in your neighborhood, your house may be hit next, you need to kind of look at this and then understand in what way are you going to defend your home. Okay? Pete?
Yes, sir. And I'm really just trying to be helpful here. The question, and I've watched the previous ones, everyone always asks, when can we shoot, right? That's the question, right? When can we shoot? And Mr. Ford here was talking about how they analyze it. GPD always asks, were you in, and this is the catchphrase or the term that they're looking for, were you in fear of death or serious bodily injury? That's what GPD will investigate and ask when someone uses self-defense. And if that's, you know, really when you're justified, is when you fear death or serious bodily injury. That's when you're justified to shoot.
Don't say that I wasn't in fear. That's because the law is worded around presumptions. So when the officer comes there, it's your house, person's dead in the house. The presumption is that, especially if that person doesn't have a right to be there, that you were in fear, okay? That's the way the castle doctrine is presumed. So you have the presumption that you had a right to shoot the person. But if you tell the officer, no, you know, how would it be? I wasn't in fear. You know, I just shot him because he was in my house. That's not you'll negate the protection of the castle doctrine, the presumption of fear. But it always helps to say, I was in fear.
I have one more question here, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not exactly explicitly self-defense, but let's say someone comes onto a farm, they've already breached the fence to get onto the property, you are going out and you're calling the police already, right? But they have no weapons, so you don't have any actual expectation of fear of self-defense. Can you use a firearm to hold them there until the police get there?
Okay, hold on there right now. Just because a person doesn't have a weapon, the law doesn't require the person have a weapon.
Sure.
So this is
I
your
understand.
benefit.
Yeah.
This would be to your benefit,
Yeah.
right? But first of all, since your fact pattern, you need to have your signs up.
Right.
There needs to be something where it's no trespass, and you can't put it in the back of the house.
Yeah, they'd be everywhere.
So go check the back. I got a sign up there.
Outside the
His
fences,
body's laying in the front. Yeah. Okay. So you get that part of it. Person's coming up. You can use deadly force. Fact pattern. Person comes in. It's at 8 o'clock at night. You see him. He's in your property, and then you're looking at him, and you have the notices up. The fear is already starting.
Sure.
Because he's there. You have the gate. In your case, you had the gate, right? You probably could shoot that person under the castle doctrine, because that's like he's in your house, just standing there like that sort of thing. So You were going to take it one step further?
Oh, I was saying if, let's say I don't actually have a fear of bodily harm.
Yeah, see, those are things you don't want to tell the cops.
Okay, sure.
So-
Okay, all right. Hey, but let's just assume that that's the case.
Oh, yeah, you
right?
just want to hold him there. Yeah.
Just assume that that's the
yeah,
case.
You can hold him there. But,
okay.
you know, again,
Yeah.
and in all reality, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was saying. I don't like killing people.
Right.
So if I need to, I just hit his kneecap and just say, just hold on until the cops come.
Okay.
No. Okay, that was something I was going to mention too.
Okay.
The most effective home protection are dogs.
Yeah.
And I don't care how good your system is, and with GPA cutting off your power, the whole system goes down when the power goes off, right? The best protection have always been animals. Just the mere barking of a dog, it repels the criminals, but it also alerts you to be on a heightened alert and go find out what's going on out there.
Mm.
I'm just not sure you get 23 dogs.
Um,
And by the way, I know
Yeah.
people in Tumon that actually have a home down there. They killed the dog at least 4 times, and they got the Rottweiler. They would throw the meat in there that's poisoned before they hit the house.
So that actually brought up another question I was wondering. So what if the dogs end up harming the trespasser?
End up harming?
If
The
the
trespasser?
dogs attack the trespasser, then
Well,
yeah.
I'm not going to charge the dog.
Oh, right. All right. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, yeah.
honestly, I think you're in a different area there because you'd have to have the facts that you knew that dog was going to kill that person or really harm.
Yeah.
You know, chewing on the criminal or chewing on the guy
Right.
on the inside. Of course, there's civil liability, but I mean, you got a gate. The dog attacks the whoever's in the gate. It's kind of like a assumption of risk thing
Right.
for the person jumping in there.
Sure.
But the more difficult ones is when you've got those the killer dogs that are known like the pit bull, and you let it get outside your boundary and it mauls
Yeah,
a
yeah.
kid, right?
Right.
That's usually the
Of course.
the fact pattern. But even also, by the way, without a gate and you got a pit bull in there, and even if he's on a leash, you get like a toddler that
Yeah.
wanders because you don't have a gate in there. There's civil liability. It borders on criminal, by the way, when you have that, because you know that dog's a killer,
Yeah.
and you know that there's kids in the neighborhood, and you don't have any barrier, and they walk into your thing. We're not in a castle doctrine situation, but you're in a other potential charges of being a homeowner, property owner.
Okay.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
I think bottom line, what all of this is, you know, the bottom of this whole conversation is it's very fact intensive. And you know, GPD will go out there and they'll talk to you, but we don't want to leave you with the impression that that's all they go on. Because there's also the circumstances around, and maybe if they see the shot was over here and they see another shot over there, it might point out that maybe you were doing one of these, right? And you were being a little reckless with how you were going about it. So it's important to make it's very split second. So it's a very difficult call a lot of times. And then consider this: if you do use deadly force, the other person's dead. So really, it's just you and whatever physical evidence might be around that might indicate how you probably behaved, right? And if there's a camera, that's even better, right? All these things go into play in the determination whether to charge you or not to charge you. But it's fact intensive. And we are very cognizant of the fact that you are on the front lines of stopping crime, not only in your home, but also in your neighbor's home, right? And in your community. Because we all want to be, you know, I see a beautiful kid there, right? And we want that kid to grow up in a healthy community that is free from crime, that is free from, you know, all the negative impulses that exist in society today. And sure, the Attorney General's office is empowered by the Organic Act to act as the public prosecutor, right? And to prosecute crimes, and he is really confined by the laws that are on the books. But guess who can help? You guys, right? You can call your legislators if you think that there's an exception that should be entered into the statute or a circumstance. You know, we live in very fast-changing times, as we can all agree, and things change. And maybe a doctrine that existed in the past doesn't really gel anymore with technology being as it is, that kind of thing. So there are ways that we can improve the laws, and that's where you guys are on the front lines. Because you can call your legislators. You can call the Attorney General's office. He's very, very amenable to that.
you know, how we can improve the laws. And then, of course, once the laws are passed, you can enforce them, right? And that makes your life a lot easier. Because sure, we've been up here and we've been talking about law, and perhaps you guys are already thinking, what do I have to buy at Kmart? Because my eyes are glazing over. Because this is all, you know, law, right? Who wants to hear that, right? That's very technical. But at the end of the day, you're in your home, you want to be safe in your home, you want to be able to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Which is really what we all want at the end of the day, before we, you know, shove off here. But, and that's about it. So just be very, very careful, you know, when you exercise that deadly force. But there will be times when you'll be called in this life to make difficult choices, as you all know. And when that happens, just be knowledgeable of what the law is. And I think that that's where these guys, they come in and they really help.
Thank you, Attorney Alberto. I have one question here from Ethan. Yes.
Hi, sorry. I wanted to ask a question about the dog situation.
Yeah.
So if I'm walking along the street, I'm not in anybody's private property, and a dog comes out to attack me. If I'm running away, and I defend myself with my firearm against a dog, is that
Okay, that's a live in a village, you're gonna have that happen.
yes?
That dog comes at you, okay, let me just, 1980s, I think it was in high school, Father Duenas. I'm going on the side of, remember Naval Air Station that used to be in the middle? It was all wired off and fenced off. And my parents are driving me, and I'm looking over there, and I see this dog running, and then I see this, and it's running away from the MP. He literally pulled out his .45 and shot it on, I think it was like 7:30 in the morning. I'm just going, wow. Opposite, you're in a village, that dog comes out to you, and you have a firearm. As long as you don't hit something, this is why these guns are not for everybody. Okay, you need to know how, they're a tool. You need to know how to use them. What's going to happen if you miss the target and it ricochets, and are you going to hit the little kid that's next to that dog? You know, and that's why, on the one hand, I would say that if the cops arrested you, and that was the fact pattern, that the dog was coming at you, I don't care if it's a Chihuahua, you know, and you pulled out your gun, sorry girls. You pulled out the gun and you just popped the dog and you hit the target. That was the extent of the report. Okay, first violation is that you shot a firearm off within 50 feet of a house. So you could get charged with that, but this idea of the self-defense came up. So I probably would say no, and then tell the guy, try not to do that. Get a pellet gun versus your firearm. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I mean, again, it's a matter of self-defense. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of, because there's no violation of homicide or hurting somebody. It was an animal. Now, the animal rights people are going to jump off their chairs on this thing. But, yeah, he's got a lot of dogs, by the way. But my point is,
yes,
the law also, we're talking a lot of civil law. You're supposed to keep your dog leashed and in their yard and stop, defecating on everybody else's yard. And it comes down to this: respect each other. When you own an animal, the respect to your neighbors is you keep like your kids, right? You keep them under control. Mm-hmm. And if your dog jumps into the next person's yard and scratches their car, or the cat scratches or I've even heard some dogs eat the tires, rip on the tires. Mm-hmm. That's the respect that we have when we're all close together in villages that we need to understand and respect. But I kid you not, that dog comes up at you, it's just use what you can, because would you rather get rabies or something that could be very dangerous to people? And although Guam doesn't have rabies, it's not mean that we can't get it.
Well, the question stems from walking the kids to the bus stops in the mornings.
Right.
There's been a lot of issues with dogs chasing the kids. So a lot of parents have decided to walk their kids to the bus stop, but they still encounter these.
So what should be done technically is, if you're from the mayor's point of view, mm-hmm, call the police up, have that dog identified on whose house it is, and then go to the homeowner and inform them what the leash law is, and then also that dog harms somebody, there's probably some criminal liability there, mm-hmm, with allowing your animal to hurt anybody, let alone harass, right? Most of these boonie dogs are chicken shit, right? You stop and you
yes,
do that, and then they turn around. But I mean, there's mean dogs.
There are, yeah.
So,
Okay,
yes.
yes, okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I mean. It prevents we that live in the villages from going out there and enjoying the walk. Exercise is very important to people. And, you know, most ladies you see, they're carrying a stick, right?
Yes.
Or the golf club thing. But I mean, do you have to do that? It's really the respect of the neighbors that own that dog. Otherwise, the dog pound, Department of Agriculture, you call them up, and I've seen that they've been doing that. Some of the mayors have been able to have a good relationship. They literally come out and catch those animals, or they put the traps out to catch the dogs, and then they're also selling them off island. I heard the boony dogs are considered a premium in the States to a certain extent.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so it's an opportunity for business, or but yeah, if I had a firearm and that thing was coming at me, I'd probably shoot it.
Okay, okay.
So.
Yeah, understood, thank you.
But yet the person say, "Oh, it's not my dog, so what do I do with that dog?"
Yeah, fact pattern, right? So
But
if the
yet
neighbor
the dog
says
comes
that,
from their place.
yeah, so versus those people that are just feeding the dogs on the side of the road, right? So if you can establish that that is your dog because your neighbor knows it's your dog or the facts support it, then there's clearly civil liability, but I mean, there may be criminal. What would be a crime on asking the wrong guy?
It's really too, it's not fact-specific enough to talk about whether or not there's criminal liability, but obviously under those circumstances, if your child's been bit by the dog, you would be able to contact the Department of Agriculture. They should be able to identify and take that dog in. While rabies is not, it's been eradicated or has never existed on this island, as far as we can tell, there may be other communicable diseases you'd be worried about, and that would be fact-driven to determine ultimately what other responses you could have. You'd want that dog isolated and taken in and analyzed for the medical reasons just alone, so the doctor could be appropriately treating your child.
What happened, agriculture came and picked up the dog, and they took him for 10 days and brought him back and left him there again. So, it bit another kid. And the dog is still there. So what do we do with that dog? Shoot it?
I know there's I want to say that in Title 10 there's some sort of a leash law probably on that, on dogs. I'd have to research that, and I'd probably help the mayor and a lot of the mayors, Dedito especially. But I mean, yeah, Yigo, Dedito, all over, the dogs are out. So,
My area.
right. So the first thing is Department of Agriculture to round them up. I know they're doing it. But we're talking about criminal liability. I'd have to look at what type of criminal liability that would be, the intent, general intent crime. But it would be a leash law citation sort of thing, right? So it'd probably be a leash law citation. It's like the traffic ticket, the panhandler ticket type thing. Yeah. So what do? You know, there's a lot of dogs around. You know, dogs are different than cats. So cats usually aren't aggressive. The dogs are.
Like I said, I know in my area, we have a bunch of dogs, and the owners well, they don't want to be the owners, but they're the one feeding it. So.
Right, but you know, it goes to responsible villagers. The mayor's office, I'm sure they would talk to the owner, but if you own an animal, you're supposed to keep it in your property. It's not supposed to be running in other people's property. And I'll just say it. We had one attorney that was trying to work for our office. He literally, in the state that he was applying for the office, there was a nuisance dog in the other yard. He shot the dog with his rifle from his house into that neighbor's house, and they charged him, rightfully so. But I mean, the dog's got to get outside the yard before you shoot him. And by the way, well, on Guam, there have been charges already. I think in the past 5 years, they've charged people that have shot the animals, right? But that was just animal cruelty, the way that they approached it, the facts. So on the one hand, who wants to hurt animals just to hurt animals, right? But at the same time, if the animal's dangerous to your kids especially, or other neighborhood kids. Yeah. And by the way, that this whole thing with protect one another, the self-defense, in the law it's codified. You have a right to self-defense. You have a right to defend third parties, defense of a third party, it's in the statutes as well. So that which you have a right to, and it's more noble when somebody goes out and even helps the Good Samaritan type and helps somebody. And obviously, I think most common people's response would be giving them more of a benefit of the doubt when they were trying. And we've had that in our fact pattern. A person is living in one home, hears screaming in the other house, runs over to help that person, ends up shooting somebody in that house. You have the defense protecting another person, and then potentially the castle doctrine to protect that person. So,
Sir, I have one more question.
Okay, on the castle doctrine, you guys, the thing we're doing is about in your castle, right? So I got this other one, is that stand your grounds.
Right.
Is that in place? In the
Stand your ground was outside your castle. That was usually, that's the Zimmerman case I mentioned. He wasn't in his home, he was on the sidewalk, right? So he got approached. The argument was that he had to retreat. Jury, they charged him, and the jury found not guilty, right? So stand your ground and castle doctrine are just, they're two different concepts, but the retreat, the duty to retreat is when you don't have the castle doctrine. That becomes a question, whether you have a duty to retreat or not.
Okay, so like for example, if you're a concealed carrier, right, and you're out there in public, a perpetrator comes up to you and points a gun at you, and you turn around and, as self-defense, and you shoot the person because you...
No, you don't get charged with our office. That person pulls that firearm out and points it at you, and you have a firearm. What, you want me to get shot in the back? It's usually you pull it out in response. That's immediate deadly force.
Right.
So in that case, I can't give you the exact rule that there is a duty to retreat or not. I don't think there's a duty to retreat. Once they've pulled the gun on you, you need to respond. That's using deadly force with deadly force. That's non-deadly force, and then you use deadly force. That's where the law regulates that stuff.
So wouldn't that fall under stand your grounds?
It probably would stand because you're confronted with an immediate threat. So you have the right to immediately respond. To run in that situation, you're going to get shot in the back. Yeah.
And the law presumes, reasonableness in terms of the circumstances, and you're a reasonable person and that kind of thing. Because I'm going to confound the little fact pattern there. Suppose it's Halloween, and someone's costume is they're a cop, right? And they have a weapon that looks like a weapon, right? What do you do under those circumstances? They're pointing it at you. It's not really a weapon, is it?
When you get a lot of those
But
those 17, 16-year-old kids with the gun that looks like a real gun, especially nowadays in those 3D printers and things. Yeah.
Generally, they have that little red little heart. Yeah.
Right. But you see how the community comes up in outrage on both sides? You get those people that believe in the second right, to a fanaticism. They say, hey, fair fight, it was a danger of it. Then you get the other side that's saying that the kid didn't deserve to die because they bought it at the store and they took off the orange cap on the top of it.
Yeah.
Or the BB gun. Those BB guns, they look like a real gun, the pistols. So, those are the things the AGs and the prosecutors have to deal with every day.
Right. And the officers, because they come in and they've got to investigate
Right.
that. And they've got to see how was your eyesight? Circumstances like that, facts.
Oh,
That'll show your ability to perceive, because maybe you thought that it was a weapon, and there may, in the final analysis, it might be that it was reasonable, your belief that it was a real weapon, because it had all the indicia of being a real weapon, and then you were in fear. So under those circumstances, of course, the law is going to protect you. You know what I'm saying? But at the bottom of everything, it's gonna go on the facts. And those facts aren't just limited to what's said, it's also to what's surrounding, to your ability to perceive, let's say, to hear, that kind of thing, your predisposition, the person's history. All those things get considered. And that's where the evidence comes in, right? And there's a code, it's called the evidence code, right? And it contains all sorts of rules on what's considered all those standards, all that thing gets thrown together in a big, big pot, and then that's the facts. Based on that, that's how we determine whether to charge someone or not. And just to put another point, you know, there's a presumption here that maybe your toolkit only has the ability, maybe to bring charges or to call the police. But in your circumstance with the dogs, right, you can also do something civilly. You know, it's called nuisance. If you have a neighbor that's got Rottweilers or pit bulls running around, and you're afraid for your kid, and there's a predisposition because that dog has bitten someone before, that kind of thing, you can sue them.
Right, small claims court,
That
you
kind
don't
of
need to
thing.
get a lawyer on Guam.
Right?
I think the jurisdiction may be up to 15,000,
So,
used
I
to
mean,
be
you're
10.
not limited to just, you know, criminally dealing with certain problems. You could also do it civilly. There's code enforcement. There's a number of tools that you can employ to protect your family and, you know, beautiful kids like that kid laughing right there, that one. You know? So, yeah.
So when it comes to like stand your ground type of equivalent that we're discussing, if it doesn't fall under castle, pursuing the first, second, et cetera, you're out in public, you can't assert that it's an occupied vehicle, your home, business, right? Now we're back into the world of regular self-defense. And generally you can't use deadly force. You can use it if you're protecting yourself from death, serious bodily harm, kidnapping, a rape, or sodomy.
Right? And thank you. And you know, so if it's one of those circumstances, you could potentially be justifiable in using deadly force as long as the circumstances make it clear that you can't safely retreat or surrender a possession or thing to this other individual. Because unlike Castle, which, you know, we have no, the duty to retreat is gone, right? Regular self-defense, the statute here would, like we are going to look at, it says, were you able to retreat safely, right? And so that's going to be the question that we would be looking at with that arrest record. Do we think you had the ability to safely retreat? And more than likely, you know, generally we're probably in all the examples I heard tossed out today going to say no, right? Like they pulled a gun out right there. Like I've been a gun owner for a good part of my life. My family, you know, there were veterans, and they always taught me, hey, you don't draw a gun and point at someone unless you intend to use it. So assume that other person's going to shoot you if they drew it on you. And if I was carrying at the time, I probably would have, I might have become a Maggie. So, but, you know, that is the question, right, we got to address at that point. If law enforcement decided, in their opinion, that you could have safely retreated, and they arrest, right, that we still get to decide that on our end as an AG's office. We don't have to prosecute. We could look at the circumstances and go, what are we asking you to turn around and walk away and believe that this assailant, this potential assailant, is going to honor their word? They've already broken the rules and norms of society by drawing a weapon on you. And so that's why we were, you know, the general saying, hey, you know, if they draw and you fire, the facts, at least as presented in the hypothetical, would lead towards, we don't think you can safely retreat, right? So that, while that question exists, in a way it sounds a lot like the stand your ground example you were getting at. As far as I can tell, we don't have a stand your ground statute here, right? But it's the reasonableness, right? It always gets back to you take the facts as a whole and what's reasonable. And then there had been a question thrown out there on like animals, right? So now this one I haven't ever had the pleasure of dealing with before, so I actually had to dig deep. And we do have a chapter 70 in Title IX which deals with offenses against animals, and including, you know, if you cause through criminal negligence, recklessly or knowingly, intentionally causing the death of an animal, there is potential criminal liability, right? But if it was in a self-defense circumstance, once again, we're back to either castle doctrine or you're statutory right of regular defense. And that is something we'd be looking at. So let's say it's in public, and once again, we're pretending under the facts. Castle doesn't apply because Castle's such a great doctrine, right? If it applies, we're pretty much not going to charge. But so let's say it's regular self-defense. We're back to, were you able to safely retreat? If it's a dog, I would think not. When I was younger, I got attacked by a dog once. They're fast, and once they decide to attack something, they're on you, and they decide to commit, right? So, luckily someone was able to help me, but, and luckily enough I didn't have a weapon, or I would have had to, rest of my life think about how I took out a dog. But if you were in that circumstance, I wouldn't fault you at all, and I would recommend, to the team, I would say, hey, I don't think they had an ability to retreat. I'm not sure we could charge this, right? Well, at least prevail if we charged. And so, Mr. Bonavita over there, he is the assistant chief prosecutor, and when the facts get really close, he's like the one I would go to and say, hey, sir, I think this is going to be really tough. I would recommend, at this time, I'm thinking either moving forward or not moving forward. What are your thoughts, right? In these close types of cases is what I'm getting at. So I hope that helps, you figure out your potential situation, even if, here's the sad part, even if we didn't charge you under the animal statute, when I scrolled down, there was in that same title, it allowed for civil liability, and that would be outside of our purview, but it would allow under section 70.85 a civil rights action. So you could face civil liability outside of our office, right? So that is something that you'd have to consider in the event you deprive another individual of their property, this case being a dog.
Okay.
But if it's Castle, you're immune. Do remember that. If it's Castle doctrine, you're immune from civil liability. So.
And you also get your attorney's fees, by the way. If the person was to sue you and you were able to raise the Castle doctrine on a civil suit, they order them to pay your attorney's fees. Okay? So, again, we provide the actual statute for you. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank Mayor Lizama and your staff for hosting us today. We have some giveaways. We have a issue with the our Crime Victims Response Unit, and our motto over there is Crime Victims Fighting Back. I think it's very important, so I'm going to let Austin do that.
All right, so as the AG mentioned, we do have some giveaway. If you remember during your sign-in, you were given a raffle ticket, so maybe try to see if you could find that. Blue raffle ticket. You could stand in front here. We have some, the whole reason we're all here, right? The goal is to protect one another. I don't have guns to give away. I don't think our office has guns to give away. Not yet. Procurement law or whatever. But we do have some closest to that, right, is the idea of being able to defend yourself. I know there's some here you could maybe showcase. We have some pepper sprays. There's a little cat ear sting. You guys familiar with that? It looks deadly when you equip it for some reason. And we also have a noisemaker, right, to attract attention in the event that, unfortunately, you find yourself having to be out there and you have to defend yourself. And so we're giving them away for the 5 lucky winners that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and raffle it. Hopefully I call your number out. It's the closest thing we have to bingo, right? Like the thing over there. All right, I have my first ticket here. Sorry, did you want to read the number?
Okay, well, this is 865809.
865609. Do we have a...
The name would be Dan Mesa.
Dan Mesa, congratulations.
So,
sorry.
we have different colors on this. There's pepper spray. He's talking about, this is that, it's die cast. So for the women out there, it's not a joke. So if you're in a situation, you literally can jab the person or do the neck thing. But, and there's a sounder.
Congratulations, Mr. Mesa. I'm going to go ahead and draw the next ticket here. Here you go, Mr. AG.
Joe Areola.
Congratulations, Mr. Joe Areola. We'll think about it. All right, we have our next ticket here.
Carlos Barcalang? Barcelona?
All right, congratulations, Mr. Barcelona. Just got 2 more
We
left.
also have the pink one if you wanted to do pink in there. Brianna Allen? Brianna Allen?
Going once, going twice. Ms. Allen. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Roland Sablon.
So Roland Sablon, congratulations. Yes. You can deal with the dogs now. Yes. All right. Last but not least.
And Marlene Mesa.
Marlene. Oh, we got husband and wife right here. Congratulations. Give it to somebody? Okay. All righty. Oh, that's Joe, I think this is your son over here, right? Jared. So you want to give it away to another one? Okay. Here you go, sir.
Ramuel? Barcelona.
All right, congratulations, our father and son. Okay, sir. And you can-
Okay, well, again, I wanted to thank everybody for coming to our event. And we'll probably be doing some more in the future, but as I said before, if everybody respects one another, you respect life, other people's lives as well, I think that we can move on in our life and increase our quality of living in our community. Colt? Thank you very much for coming. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks for coming.